Welcome back in, you guys, to another One Piece video. Chapter 1174 has released, and with it, I bet you're expecting an apology. I bet you're expecting me to get on my knees and say, I'm sorry, Ange, I'm sorry, Oda, for making those traitor theories day after day. Well, if you came for that, then I got some bad news for you. I'm doubling down, boys. That is right. People, or should I say,
giant lovers,
decided to read this chapter, and their main takeaway was that Ange is an innocent person. Ange just wants to help the poor orphan girl. Well, you'd be mistaken. That isn't just any poor orphan girl that Ange was saving. It's another sleeper agent. Welcome back in, you guys, to One Piece Chapter 1174. My name is Sai, and today it is time we drink the Kool-Aid and become completely delirious because I might have been wrong. So, first things first, obviously we gotta start with the reader request that we got this week, and I really enjoyed it. Of course, there's not too much I can nitpick about. I can't say, oh, this is foreshadowing for Roger because this might happen later. But nope, we can't do that because Roger is indeed dead. So instead, we get to feast our eyes and turn off our brains towards this image of Roger walking a T-Rex. Gotta admit, I really like this image. I don't know why, obviously, when I look at a T-Rex, I automatically think of X Drake, even though he doesn't have a T-Rex fruit. It looks pretty damn similar, Allosaurus T-Rex, you could have fooled me, brother. I gotta admit, I also like Roger's fit here. Typically, we see him in his Pirate King garbs, but here, he looks like he just got done operating in the jungle. So now, on to the chapter. First page, we got Saint Sommers realizing that he might be a little bit screwed. Obviously, because the Dark Nika destroyed the ship last chapter, he now has no way to transport the kids to the Holy Land safely. And not just that, but Dark Nika also left a massive hole in the sea cloud. So, Sommers is like, man, I need to get rid of that arrow. The kids are just gonna walk off the cliff. This is awful. Our mission is gonna go down the drain. Wait a minute. Kids falling down. Arrows leading them there. There's also more kids at the school. We could just do this again here in a little bit. So he starts drooling because he's just so damn excited by the prospect of these people falling to their deaths. Pretty insane stuff. I think when it comes to at least just Saint Sommers right now, I don't look at him and view him as this insurmountable monster. I don't see him as this massive powerhouse we gotta beat down. I simply see him as a deranged comedian. At this point, I am looking at Saint Sommers and I'm just laughing with him. Like, how crazy can Oda actually make one character? I don't even know if the other God Knights are like this, man. I mean, hell, even killing him in this chapter is like, yo, what is Saint Sommers doing? Dude, the plan? Saint Sommers, come on! And here's the thing, right? At least he tried to stop the arrow. It looks like he did pick up the Denden Mushi and he said, hey, Gunko, stop the arrow, we gotta change plans. But of course, because Imu is now in control of Gunko, for some reason, Imu just doesn't respond. I don't know why Imu didn't respond. Like, I get it. Imu is not Gunko, but Imu is still there. Imu can hear the Denden Mushi, right? Imu can simply just stop the arrow if they wanted to. So I'm kind of curious about that. But then again, Imu in this chapter doesn't really give us anything to work with. We have one panel of Imu in this entire chapter, and they're dead silent, The drums of liberation are blasting in the background. Luffy and Loki show up by the end, and Imu is just kind of aura farming. So yeah, Saint Sommers can't really do too much about it. The parents show up saying, oh, this is awful, what do we do? And they try to cut the arrow, something that Saint Sommers didn't even attempt because he knows it's pointless. He said, hey, you fools, I would have stopped the arrow by now if I couldn't. So instead, let's just accept the fate of the kids and let them walk off the Sun Realm. So yeah, he's having a field day with all of this. And of course, the parents, the brothers, the family members, they're not giving up easily. Honestly, I really enjoyed this chapter. I could see some people complaining already, just based off the fact that we don't go anywhere else. We don't see the follow-up of Zoro. We don't see what's happening with the Straw Hats that just got freed. We don't know where Sanji's going. We still have no idea where Frankie's at. And we have no clue how Brook is holding up against emu. There's a lot of things that we just did not see in this chapter, but I will admit, because we focus so much on the kids and the parents, I really enjoyed it. I really felt the emotion coming out of these pages, brother. So the kids, of course, because they can't really comprehend what's going on, they're like, yo, this is divine punishment. This must be because I didn't do X, Y, or Z when I was with my parents. I was acting up. And we just get flashback after flashback after flashback. And I will admit, some of these are kind of funny. Like Colin beat up another kid and took his toy. And the toy just so happens to be Emmett, the robot we saw back on Egghead. And it's like, yo, do the Giants know about Emmett? I don't think so, because when the Giants showed up on Egghead, they were like, yo, what the hell is that thing? And it's like, wait, shouldn't you guys know? Like, you guys sell toys of him in Elbaph. Maybe there's like a drawing in Elbaph of Emmett, and I guess some Giants just don't know what this is. They're like, oh yeah, this is just a figure. This is what all robots look like. I don't know. I thought that was so interesting. Like, okay, an Emmett the robot, who had that? Where did they buy it from? Who made it? And plus, you gotta imagine, these are giant kids. So that Emmett the robot toy, it's gotta be like the size of a house, man. So yes, that was Colin's flashback. Another kid had a whole flashback where they didn't finish their vegetables, which does remind me of Sanji and how he has a whole code of always finishing his food. And then we had another kid who took their parents' swords, which reminds me of Zoro. There's another one who hates that their parents are pirates. And I feel like that's a Nami reference because Nami really hated pirates growing up. And then there's a kid that lies a lot, which of course, they have a long nose. I think that is an Usopp reference. The next one up is a kid who's angry at their mom for bringing their homework to school because the homework isn't finished yet. And I'm not too sure who that's a reference to. The kid kind of looks like Frankie, or at least the horns do. And then of course, the mom looks like Jinbei. Okay, I'm stretching it now. The earlier flashbacks, I'm like, okay, I can draw one-to-one comparisons with each Straw Hat. But when I got to this point, I'm like, okay, now we're just like, pulling at strings, brother. There's some more kids who, I could go on about, but I think the one that everybody wants me to talk about is ANGE. So last chapter, Oda gave Jinbei a dialogue box saying, oh, ANGE started running off towards the village. There's no way she'd make it in time. Like, what is she doing? We see this chapter that she wanted to save Joanna because Joanna is an orphan and nobody showed up for her. Obviously, we have parents showing up, fathers, brothers, cousins, and etc. But Joanna has nobody. So we get a 1 to 2 panel flashback of ANGE saying, hey, because you don't have any parents, I can step in and fill that role for you. Of course, Joanna, being an angsty kid, says, no, leave me alone. I don't want that. That's embarrassing. But here comes ANGE hugging Joanna and making sure that she does not die alone. Here's the thing. When it comes to my ANGE theory, there was always a missing piece of the puzzle. You might have seen it. I've drawn parallels to ANGE and the Norse evil giant Angrboda. And when it comes to this comparison, there was just one detail that just kept me awake at night. One thing that kept on gnawing at my head. So, in Norse mythology, Angrboda is the mother of monsters, responsible for the birth of Jormungandr, Fenrir, and another character named Hel. So, ANGE, during the assignment, the Nightmare assignment, brought to life Fenrir and Jormungandr through Killingham's ability. There's only one thing that we didn't see yet, and that is Hel. And I was like, man, if only we had that one extra reference, then this theory would make so much sense. And here we go. Here we go. Hel is none other than Joanna. And the thing is, hear me out. In my ANGE's evil theory videos, I said that ANGE might be like Mother Carmel. Turns out that's not the case, because she's someone worse. Gotta remember, after Big Mom escaped the clutches of Mother Carmel, she fell into the hands of the groomer known as Streusen, and that might be who ANGE is in Elbaph. Not only has she been working with the God Knights on the side, not only has she been trafficking kids to the Holy Land, but now she's taken it upon herself to raise hell in Joanna. Your time's coming, Ange. I see you. While everybody thinks you're innocent off of this chapter, I'm still watching you like a hawk. My Asian eyes can't see very far, but I can see through your ruse, Ange. Yeah. Can you guys blame me? You know, can you blame a brother for going down with the ship? Nobody blames a guy for doing that. You know, the best captains always go down with their sinking, burning ship, and that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm singing this theory until the day One Piece is over. And hell, we talked about it earlier, but Ange seemingly has some decent foresight, you know? Nightmare assignment before Killingham shows up. She took off running before the Dark Nika monster destroyed the ship in the clouds. Who's to say that Ange didn't want to get on top of Loki and behind Luffy so that she could stab him in the back? Possibilities, man, possibilities. You gotta remember, all the best traders in the series play their role so well as a good person. Kanjuro, willing to burn himself in a pot of Odin to convince the scabbards that he's one of them. Yorick willingly let herself get petrified to show that she was good, that she's not a traitor. The best traders play their cards close until the end game. And Ange, just because you're a giant, just because I don't like the way you look, this theory's not going anywhere. So now that I got all that crazy cope out of the way, it's time to talk about the last family member that shows up to the scene, and that is, of course, Roto. He ends up hugging Bjorn, and we have a flashback where Bjorn is like, hey, you're a dirty otaku! Make sure that nobody in class sees you! And then Roto is like, oh, of course, I'll stay in the background, ha ha ha. It's just so sad, man. You know, obviously, we were all kids one day, so I like to imagine a lot of people can kind of relate to these kids and their mindset. Of course, this isn't truly divine punishment, but in their heads, this is it. You know, they deserve this because of the minor inconveniences that they caused their family members, which, you know, I'm looking forward to post-Elbaph when the kids and their parents or family members just really get along. You know, maybe we'll get like a post-Elbaph page where all of these kids are doing the exact opposite of what we saw in the flashback. I think that would be really damn wholesome. So now, since the sea cloud is gone, the parents and the kids plummet to the underworld, but that is when they're caught mid-air and saved by Luffy and Loki. Luffy uses a brand new gear fit ability called Rice Cracker? Yeah, Japanese Rice Cracker. So because the kids have thorns on them, Luffy says, hey, can you guys like hurry up and get off of me? You're really prickly, which is crazy, right? We saw what those thorns did to the parents. The parents were taking like extreme amounts of damage. And for Luffy, who's in gear 5th, he's like, ah, man, that's prickly, guys. Can you like hurry up and get off? It's hilarious, you know, just the fact that he negs St. Sommers' ability, since St. Sommers' ability, being thorns and sharp objects, should actually hurt Luffy. So one thing I do want to bring up now, since we're talking about God Knight abilities, but I do wonder if Haki would have worked on those arrows. We have not seen a character yet use Haki to cut those arrows. I mean, hell, Saul, when he was trying to stop it, he couldn't cut it. These parents all tried to chop the arrow, no Haki there. And it's like, man, like, will Haki be enough to beat it? Or is it just too strong now because Imu is controlling Gunko? Not too sure. I mean, hell, even St. Sommers said, hey, I can't do anything about that. And we know that he has Haki. There's gotta be someone who can cut the arrow. Like Zoro, for example. If Zoro was here, would he be able to cut it? I'd like to imagine yes, because Haki should be able to overwrite Devil Fruit powers. But we don't have Zoro here, so we can't test that theory. Instead, we just have a bunch of giant parents that have not used any Haki against that arrow. On that note, I'd like to imagine that Ripley has Haki because she does seem like a decent fighter based off of appearances and relationship to Scopper, but unfortunately, we didn't get to see her attempt to stop the arrow here. So, we see that Loki no longer has bandages covering his eyes, and he says, hey, everybody, when we get up to the Sun Realm, you gotta get off my back. I cannot guarantee your safety. I am not a savior. I am a destroyer, guys. What the hell is going on here? Luffy says that you guys got lucky. We were just passing by. And I'm kind of curious to see where they were this entire time. Like, we are 3 chapters after everybody else got to the Sun Realm. And it's like, okay, Luffy and Loki are showing up late to the party. Why? Is it just because they're having fun flying around? Did it take a while for Loki to transform into this giant dragon? Don't know. We go over to St. Sommers, and he has his hand out like, wait a minute. Why is it snowing all of a sudden? What is going on here? And we also see lightning in the background as well. And it's like, oh, this is just odd. And that's not the only weird occurrence, but everything in the Sun Realm starts bouncing. Guys, they are straight changing the terrain here. These awakenings are going nuts. And the thing is, I've seen people equating the lightning and the snow to Loki, and I think that's very fair. But we have to remember that a couple chapters back, when Loki used the Niflheim ice ability, he said that was Ragnar's ability. He said, hey, let's show them what you got, Ragnar, and then boom, ice. And then, of course, as far as lightning goes, Loki was still chained up with Sea Stone. He hit the tree with Ragnar, and lightning came down. Is the snow and thunder from Ragnar, or is it from Loki? Or is it both? There is a chance that, Loki is simply magnifying his powers through Ragnar too. There's a lot of possibilities, right? Until we actually know what Ragnar's Devil Fruit is and what Loki's Devil Fruit is, I think a lot of that is still going to be left in the air, right? We got to remember, we think he's Ratatoskr from Norse mythology, but we have no clue. Right now, he's just a weird Devil Fruit hammer squirrel thing. And Loki, on the other hand, is just a giant black dragon. Could be Nidhogg, of course. I've seen a lot of people saying Nidhogg. Or it could be something completely inverse and unique to One Piece, like Sun God Nika. So, because Luffy is in his Gear 5th form, of course, the drums of liberation are resounding across Elbaph, and the giants are like, yo, what is that rhythm? What is this trembling? Jarl stops, and he says, yes. On a strange day of snow and lightning and thunder, the sky shall be covered by a colossal beast. And along with the drums of liberation, the sun god shall appear. And that is when we get that final double spread of Loki spreading his wings with Luffy and Ragnar atop his head. I love it, man. I have been on the dragon train for a while now. My one qualm, the one hang-up I had, was that I wanted his dragon to look good. I didn't want the other dragons we've gotten so far in One Piece. Not like I hated those designs. It's just that we've had so many iterations of it. The dragons at Punk Hazard, the dragon from Ryuma. We had the dragon from the color spread. It's like, okay, I just want this dragon to be unique if it is a Western dragon. And here we have it. It does look different than the rest. And it does look pretty cool. Coloring wise, we do not know what Oda's going to do with this guy once he picks up a colored pencil. But the way he shaded in here, the way the black looks, it does lead me to believe that he is a pitch black dragon. Hell, even his teeth are black. Is it black because they're black teeth? Or is it hockeyed up, brother? I have no clue. I do like Loki's design. I've seen people clowning on him saying, oh, we waited so long for this. It's very underwhelming. I think that's all subjective. If you do not like the design, that is within your right. I cannot force you to eat your vegetables and like this. But personally, I do really enjoy Western dragons, and we don't really have a lot of good depictions of it in One Piece. So even though this is, Momonosuke Kaido Western version 2.0, I enjoy it. I really do enjoy this. The one thing I don't enjoy, and this is a nitpick, sorry guys, I will nitpick right here. I don't like Luffy or Ragnar in that final spread, because it genuinely does look like Oda or at least Oda's team, copy and pasted them. Like, this is Luffy's initial transformation into Gear 5 during Wano. His clothes are wrong, dude. Luffy had Elbaph attire on, he had the fur cape, he had the belt buckle, he had the strap, but here he's wearing his casual attire. So I think that maybe the team just forgot that Luffy's an Elbaph, and they just said, hey, let's just put this here. And the thing is, somebody might say, oh, but Sai, when he uses Gear 5th, maybe these are just his regular clothes. That's not the case, because during the Scopper Bond fight, he did use the Elbaph outfit. And since the Elbaph outfit had horns, Luffy's Gear 5th had horns too, which he's missing in this page. So yeah, like I said, it's a little bit of a nitpick, but it just really stood out to me. So now, where do we start with this discussion about Loki's design? First thing I want to mention is that Loki's eyes are interesting. You know, because going back to the last page, we saw his dragon serpent slit eyes, and it's like, oh, that's really cool. But then we get to that last page, and his eyes are very similar to the people who got Domi reversied and Big Mom's eyes when she was facing off against Kid and Law. So right now, I'm just kind of wondering what is up with that design. Is it simply artistic? Is it a style that Oda's going for? Is it a show aura? Or is there something more to it? And this isn't the first time we've seen Loki with eyes like the final panel as well. Because during the King Harold flashback, when he first transformed, he had these exact same eyes too. So again, I'm just simply curious to see if this actually means something. I've heard a theory floating around, and I do enjoy it, but people are saying that these eyes symbolize soul abilities. Of course, for people who are Domi Reversi, that makes sense because Imu is altering their soul, turning them into demons. For Big Mom, she does have the soul devil fruit. So if Loki had something similar to that, like he's a soul dragon, that would be dope. Of course, nothing really confirms or backs that up. It is simply a theory. Next thing I want to bring up is that he doesn't have flame clouds around him in that last spread. So there is a chance he's not awakened, or if he is awakened, we haven't seen it yet. So, you know, this could just be base form Loki, you know, simply transforming into a Zoan, not really exerting his power yet. And if that's the case, I want to see what awakened hybrid form Loki actually looks like. When he goes hybrid form, will he be big enough to pick up the sword in Elbaph, or will it go back to his regular size, which, granted, is still really huge? So now that Loki and Luffy have arrived in the Sun Realm, I am really just wondering what Oda has in store for us next. Because, brother, with Loki's sheer size, he is running, stomping, stampeding through Killingham's nightmare monsters. He doesn't even notice that they're there. He is simply just walking over a man. And it's like, yo, if Loki is doing that much without even trying, imagine him fighting. You know, imagine Loki breathing fire on Emu, Killingham, or St. Sommers. They're done. Of course, size isn't everything. Because his opponents are so small, you could make an argument that Loki would have a hard time pinpointing them. But when you're that big, I like to imagine the AoE is almost unavoidable. So yeah, man, what does Oda have in store for us? How will he keep the stakes up? Because surely Emu doesn't just lose here, looks bad. Sommers, yeah, you know, Sommers is kind of cooked, dude. You know, whether or not Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, Loki beats him down, I feel like Emu might just do that later. Like, hey, St. Sommers, you're kind of ruining the plan. You know, St. Sommers was willing to throw Emu under the bus. Like, hey, the kid's falling off the cliff? That's the great one's mistake. Am I right, guys? I'm just going along with it. It's like, okay, you know, at first, I wanted to give him some leeway. Like, oh, you know, maybe he'll salvage the situation. Maybe he'll beg for forgiveness. But here, it's like, okay, maybe he does get cooked. You know, maybe Emu really does just go back home and say, hey, St. Sommers, the hell are you doing, man? You really screwed the pooch. So yeah, getting back to the brass tacks is what I'm trying to say. But it's hard to imagine Loki losing when this is his transformation and when he's this big. Luffy apparently is in his giant Gear 5th form because he's bigger than Ragnar here. And Loki is still bigger than that. Dude, this is the Luffy that used Kaido as a jump rope. This is massive size Luffy, who was as big, well, maybe not as big, but, you know, around the same size as Onigashima. So I cannot even begin to fathom how big Loki is. The nightmare monsters that were maybe 10, 20 times the size of Loki are now ants when compared to him. So it's really just hard to imagine Loki losing here. And a lot of people have been bringing up Shanks in this chapter. Like, oh, wait, if Loki is this devastating, how did Shanks beat him and bring him back to Elbaph? At first, people are like, oh yeah, you know, Shanks beat him in a 1v1. Maybe he used this crew. But now People are saying, oh, you know, Shanks never even fought Loki. The conversations have gotten so crazy that people are saying that Shanks slipped Loki sleeping pills and then brought him back to Elbaph. And it's like, dude, that is insane. And, you know, I can't hate it because, like I said, it's hard to imagine being this and losing. As far as Shanks goes, I do think there was still a battle there. I don't know what it looked like. Hopefully we see a flashback later. Because I'm sure Luffy is curious, right? Luffy will see Loki perform in Elbaph, and maybe he'll pop the question like, hey, Loki, how did Shanks bring you back, dude? So, next chapter, what am I looking forward to? What am I expecting? Well, first things first, I am expecting Emu to finally say something. Because here's the thing, you know, Emu knows about the Sun God. Emu fought Joy Boy, and surely Emu knows this devil fruit. You know, he could look at Luffy, he could look at Loki and say, oh, they're teaming up again, you know. I haven't seen these guys in 900 years. Hopefully we get a lore dump because Emu can do it. Emu knows everything. It's just a matter of will they? You know, there are times where Emu acts just like Dragon and they know a lot, but they never say anything. So there is a chance we might just get more of that. But fingers crossed, we actually get some lore. So, next thing's next, but I do wonder where Luffy and Loki are gonna go first. Like, you just arrived in the Sun Realm, you just saved a bunch of family members, a bunch of kids. Who do you fight? Do you fight Domiroversi, Dorian Brogy and help Zoro out? Or do you fight Emu, who is Domiroversing people? Do you fight Killingham because he's spawning the nightmare monsters? Or do you fight Saint Sommers, who just let a bunch of kids off a cliff? It's tough. Maybe they split up. But I don't know. I feel like Luffy really is excited to be around Loki. So they could just be like a tag team throughout Elbaph. And if that's the case, I just don't know how they get pushed back. Maybe Emu has a lot in the bag we have not seen, other than a shotgun and Domiroversi. I hope so. Because right now, it feels like we cannot lose. I hope Oda flips the script around and, you know, adds some tension here. I'm not saying the God Knights have to win. I just hope Emu doesn't get mollywopped left and right. But just looking at this objectively, it doesn't look good for Emu. Because not only is Emu fighting everything here in Elbaph, but Emu is also fighting Gunko for control over her body. You know, Gunko is periodically coming in, you know, saving the Straw Hats, telling Brook to run. And it's like, man, like, Emu is not having a good time. So again, I'm just wondering what the hell they have in their bag. You know, people are saying, hey, maybe Shamrock should come back. Because Shamrock did drop a line saying that even if Loki was unchained, Shamrock would still be able to beat him down. I hope so, man. I hope Shamrock is that guy, man. I just cannot see this dragon, who is as large as a medium-sized island, losing. And one thing I almost forgot to talk about, but the title of the chapter, it's called The Strongest Thing in the World. Brother, is that Loki's title? You know, we have Whitebeard, the world's strongest man, Kaido, the world's strongest creature, Mihawk, the world's strongest swordsman. Are we adding thing to that list as well? And that thing being Loki? I don't know. It's pretty tough because as it stands, I could see it being two things. Yes, it could be Loki, but also it could just be a parent's love for their child. I've seen that being floated around. I don't hate that idea. Oda has talked about how a mother's love and mothers in general are the strongest things out there. But I don't know, man. You know, looking at Loki, it's just, maybe he deserves it. You know, maybe he deserves that title, guys. The Willamarco over on Twitter added a translator note to this title, and they said that it literally translates to the #1 strong thing in the world. Again, very ambiguous. Could be Loki, could be a mother's love, parental love, but we'll see about that. Maybe I hold a poll about this during the break week. Hell, I might hold a lot of polls now that we know what Loki actually is. Like, I want to revisit the Shamrock poll, the Shanks poll, the Luffy poll. How would those characters stack up against Loki? So now, in regards to the words Jarl spits at the end of this chapter, I love it. Of course, I do wonder where he got these words from. Is this listed on a poneglyph? Is this from the Harley text? Or is this simply a legend that has been passed down in Elbaph. Could be all of the above for all we know. It's just one of those things, you know, whenever Yarul talks, it is absolute fire. What he lacks in testosterone and age, he makes up for with words. So, next chapter, again, I'm just hoping we get updates on all the Straw Hats. I'm hoping we get some dialogue between Luffy and Ragnar, because Ragnar, alongside Emu, should be one of those characters that knows a whole bunch. Alongside the Owl. We do not know where Biblo the Owl is, but the Owl has been there for centuries. Surely the Owl will look at what's going on and say, ah, yes, it's been 900 years since I last saw this. Yeah, man, this is some pretty fire stuff. You know, when I look at Loki, I cannot help but compare him to the mural, because in the mural atop the Atom Tree, we did see a giant dragon shooting fire out of its mouth at the Divine Serpent. Maybe this is what Loki actually is. He is that dragon from the mural, which would be hilarious because obviously, like I said earlier, there were a good amount of people who thought that Loki was going to be the Divine Serpent instead, because the giant on the left side of the mural has the same markings as the serpent on the right side. There's still something going on with that. Maybe that was the case during the Void Century, but here in the current day, we see that that dragon is most likely just Loki. So with that being said though, guys, let me know your thoughts on this chapter down below. I love to hear all those thoughts, theories, and opinions down there. And of course, in the next couple of days, we will be coming back and looking through that comment section. So if you want your comment read, make sure to drop it down below. And let me know if you still believe in the ANGE is evil theory. We gotta remember some of the main points of this theory. 1, she's a giant. 2, she has glasses. 3, she is not really that great looking. And 4, the Anger-Boda connection and all the coincidences that come alongside it. Do not forget, the North remembers. Catch you guys later. Peace out. Stay safe, brothers. Have a great rest of your day.